Welcome to the Simsbury Board of Selectmen meeting. It's a regular meeting, July 10th at 6 o'clock. And then can we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I see we have a full house tonight. Not sure if it's to hear about the POCD or about Parks and Rec month. What I'd like to do is invite people up for public audience in an orderly manner. We limit public discussion to 5 minutes and we will shut you down. I will give you a little bit of warning ahead of time. Just as an FYI, we do have in our agenda tonight a discussion on altering how we run public audience that we will be discussing later in the night, may or may not vote on. So just want you to know that that may be coming. There may be changes to that process going forward. But for now, I'd like to start. Oh, one more thing I'd like to say. This came as a new recommendation. If you were going to, if there's a lot of people here potentially for the same cause, if you are here for the same cause, if you try not to repeat what the person in front of you said, but you may say that you agree with them or disagree with them or add some context there, that would be helpful to keep things moving. So just a little bit of a word of wise. And I'd like to have who would like to come up for public audience. We'll let Joan Coe come up first, and then we'll move on to everyone else.
Joan Coe, 26 Whitcomb Drive. The Board of Selectmen have now begun the political campaign for the upcoming November 7, 2023 municipal election. Democratic Town Committee on June 21, 2023 was an example of political infighting and a display of vicious attacks against First Selectman Wendy Maxtusis. The nominating committee presented their slate of nominees for First Selectman and Board of Selectmen to the Town Committee for a vote of approval. As presented, all members of the Board of Selectmen were announced with Selectman Eric Wellman nominated for First Selectman, taking the place of the present First Selectman, Wendy Maxtusis. First Selectman Eric Wellman ran for state representative, and Wendy Maxtusis became the First Selectman. Eric Wellman lost the election to Melissa Osborne for state representative. A divided town committee between the woke members and the moderates expressed their concern about the nomination of Eric Wellman taking the place of First Selectman Wendy Maxtusis. The heated and nasty bobs against First Selectman Wendy Maxtusis was like viewing a group of bullies shooting nasty bobs at the First Selectman. It appeared the selectmen were more interested in their personal feelings against First Selectman Wendy Maxtusis than governing the town in the interest of the people that elected them. Members of the Board of Selectmen not only castigated Wendy Maxtusis' style of governing, but stated that if she were nominated as a candidate for First Selectman, they would remove their names from the slate of candidates. Many meetings of the Board of Selectmen would use the platform for the board's bullying of First Selectman Wendy Maxtusis. The Board of Selectmen were acting like a bunch of self-serving bullies, not in the interest of the Simsbury, and should resign their position on the Board of Selectmen immediately. On June 23, 2023, Eric Wellman changed his party affiliation from Democratic to unaffiliated. Eric Wellman circulated a petition needing only 78 electors' signatures to place his name on the ballot for First Selectman. Eric Wellman will become a candidate as an unaffiliated candidate for First Selectman on November 7, 2023 municipal election. The referendum for a vote on the issue of cannabis sale in Simsbury will become on the ballot, and the petition gathering enough signatures. The referendum vote will be on the ballot in November 7, 2023 municipal election. Recently, the Silverman Group presented a preliminary application presentation, Hartford South Ridge at Talcott Mountain South, before the Zoning Commission. This application would increase the apartments to 504 units. The original application presented to the Zoning Commission was a mixed-use development that was never completed. Instead, the Silverman Group asked for a special exception to increase the scope of apartments without retail spaces. The bond was requested in good faith agreement that retail spaces would be built. This appears to be a breach of contract since the Silverman Group stated that the downturn of the economy making building retail spaces not cost effective. Although the Silverman Group did not fulfill their obligations that were promised on the first section, the planning department is allowing them to present another application for a new development with an additional 504 retail units. Town Attorney DiCrescenzo, representing the Silverman Group in East Granby, should disqualify himself from giving Town Planner George McGregor any advice on the Silverman Group developments in Simsbury. Town Attorney Bob DiCrescenzo did not notice that he had a contractual agreement with the Silverman Group on his conflict of interest form. It appears that the Silverman Group has received sweetheart deals on all contractual agreements in Simsbury. Giving sweetheart deals to the Silverman Group by the zoning commission will place the town in litigation from other land use developers that are not politically allied with the elected zoning commissioners when their developments are denied. The Take Food Trucks, as in addition to Millwright's Restaurant, was required to have a separate liquor permit for the distribution of alcoholic beverages. However, Town Planner George McGregor was not aware of the regulations that required a separate liquor permit and placed Take Food Truck in violation of the Liquor Control Division. The recently approved Wordsmith Bookshop on 1 Gristmill Road was recently sold. Town Planner George McGregor has not been proactive in reaching out to the new owners to discuss their future plans. Several Simsbury police officers have requested several Simsbury police officers have received the Mole System vest to alleviate back stress by distributing the equipment on their vests. The Mole vest system vest should be purchased for all police officers in the Simsbury Police Department that would lessen the back injuries and lower overtime to cover for absenteeism. And all of my comments will be posted on Simsbury PAC and Twitter at Joan Co. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Just a note from the chair. Part of the reason we are looking at moving the public audience around is to try to open the meeting with agenda items and things relevant to today's business, and to have a level of decorum and respect for the board and for the town staff. So just when we get to that discussion, that's in context for that. Okay, so let's open it up to public audience. Sure. Just state your name and your street address.
My name is Pat Weisbrick, 3 Lenora Drive, and I do want to, I know you're going to address the rules of procedure, but I do want to follow up with something that's been on my mind for quite a while, and that's Bob DiCrescenzo. And if anybody looks at his website, right in his bio, it says, and I quote, his knowledge of municipal laws applied to many issues that arise in the course of representing regulated industries, utilities, and companies of the fuel cell and alternative energy industries. So Mr. DiCrescenzo has his fingers in a lot of pies, and I think that having him retained as a town attorney does a disservice to the town. But that's not what I came to talk about. I came to talk about the rules of procedure. And what concerns me, and I do appreciate the fact that you, as the board, would like to have respectful and civil conversations. However, we do have something called the First Amendment, and everything that is written in here has been crafted to control everything, and that's not the way the First Amendment works. I would like to have a civil discussion also, but some people have less self-control than I do, and I can tell you I have not been accused of having a lot of self-control in my life. But anyway, for the public participation, a period of no less than 20 minutes probably should be, will be. Leaves things open to discussion on specific agenda items. I'll tell you, I don't know how to get an item on the agenda. So the public discussion is the only way that I know of to get an item on the agenda. What is in red was struck out about all who wish to speak, and I don't know why that went out. And then I don't know why the first selectman, upon approval of unanimous consent, probably should not have to have unanimous. I don't know why that section is deleted. The one that was inserted, the board may at its discretion, that's really loose. And provides a lot of opportunity for squelching any kind of public discourse, and then not on the meeting agenda. As I said, who knows how to get it on? And then defining the words, if done appropriately, responsibility with civility and discretion. Once again, words that are up for discussion and what some person might find to be appropriate, somebody else might not. So I think that this whole thing, and it concerns me that Mr. Wellman wrote this because years ago when the rainbow crosswalk was painted in front of the entrance to the I'm sorry? On our Iron Horse, he knows, to the park and to the Performing Arts Center. That violated the manual on uniform traffic control devices. Now, I understand that that's kind of an obscure manual, and nobody might not know anything about it, but the First Amendment is not obscure. And to have all these First Amendment, what appear to be First Amendment violations, I think this is wrong. And this sign-in sheet, I appreciate that you want to have a sign-in sheet, but I don't think there should be a subject, not an agenda item, because it may not be on the agenda. And I don't feel that having it in favor or opposed is appropriate, because it sets the tone. And then I would delete this whole thing, because this is a reiteration of everything that was in there. This is inappropriate also to.
25 seconds.
I'm finished.
Okay.
Thank you very much
All
for
right,
listening.
Thank you.
Done.
Good timing. Okay. Sure.
Hi, I'm Katie Barslow. I live at 106 Cambridge Court. I'm here with my mother and father-in-law, Mary Lou and Paul Barslow, and speaking for them as well. They live at 7 Riley Road in Cambridge or in Simsbury, and are under contract with Sunlight Construction to purchase 108 Cambridge Court. There are also many other residents from Cambridge Crossing in here tonight. And most of us are here because we noticed on the agenda meeting that there is a motion for tax foreclosure on 8 units in Cambridge Crossing, as well as the overall parcel address, I'm assuming referring to the remaining land in Cambridge Crossing. We completely understand the town's need to collect its tax revenue, and we're not disputing that if taxes are owed, action needs to be taken. However, we are concerned that by referencing 2 units that are fully completed and occupied with families in them, and several other units that are very close to being completed, 2 of which are workforce units, and we all know that affordable housing is desperately needed in Simsbury. In foreclosing on those properties, you are not only taking action against the developer, but you are also penalizing people who have invested, in some cases, over 2 years of their lives and significant financial burdens through no fault of their own, but are going to lose their home or their chance for an affordable home in this community. The other thing, speaking as a resident of the community, that we are concerned about is that if there is a foreclosure on all the lots in the community that haven't been built yet, what assurance do we have that a new buyer or new developer will come in and will address the ongoing infrastructure challenges that the town is already aware of? The town has been out many times, many different departments to answer concerns on roads, lighting, drainage, trash removal, all sorts of issues. And we thank them for the support we've gotten so far. But if it's sold, I don't know that we're trading one mess for another mess. And the lack of visibility into what the intent is very concerning as a resident. That's all I have to add on this front.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, my name is Gary Santucci. Katie articulated very well. I'm speaking along the same lines. I'm building a workforce home at Cambridge as well. I have, like many people, have a lot of money invested in it right now. I'm at about 90% complete, literally weeks away. And I'm just concerned and wondering how it might impact us if there's a foreclosure. In the essence of time, I won't reiterate what Katie said, because as I said, she articulated it very well. I just wanted to say I'm another workforce person and workforce unit, and a lot of invested in it, and 2 years of a lot of issues. So that's all. That's really all I wanted to say. I just
Thank
kind of
you,
want
Gary.
to expand a little.
Sure, Lori.
Good evening, I'm Lori Boyko. I live at 15 Oakhurst Road. Good evening to my fellow Simsbury residents who have graciously accepted positions to serve as selectmen. Tonight I stand before you as a Simsbury resident, elector, and U.S. citizen to exercise and protect my inalienable right granted to me by our Creator to free speech. It is a right, not a privilege, but a right, as a free human, one that is created equal, no more, and certainly no less equal than the members of the Board of Selectmen who were chosen by the populace to serve the functions of the town governance, but who were not elected to lord over their fellow citizens. That right to free speech was not granted to us by our government. The U.S. Constitution protects those rights that the Declaration of Independence recognized are inalienable and to be applied equally to all. The Constitution of Connecticut also enshrines these rights. The power to curtail that right to free speech does not rest in your hands. This is not my opinion. It is one that state and federal courts have adjudicated over and over. In fact, you may not be aware that this very issue of public comment at Simsbury Board of Selectmen meetings was the subject of a federal lawsuit some years ago, and is the reason this document on the wall proclaims, whereas the town of Simsbury is committed to a democratic and participatory form of government, and whereas the members of this board serve at the pleasure and in service to all residents of the town, and whereas the members of the board recognize the value of the opinions of the citizens of the town, and it has set aside a portion of its meeting to receive public comment, and whereas the members of the board desire to conduct the business of the town in public while maintaining decorum and efficiency, it is resolved that, and this was from the lawsuit, in addition to and in accordance with all applicable state statutes, charter provisions, and constitutional protections, the Board of Selectmen shall adhere to the following guidelines. It goes on to talk about reserving a portion of a half an hour of its meetings for public audience, to hear the views and comments of the public. It goes on to talk about decorum, but it speaks about whether there's disruption in the audience. If a lawsuit against the town isn't reason enough, in the 1964 Civil Rights Supreme Court opinion of Sullivan versus the New York Times, Justice William Brennan's 9-1 opinion reiterated, and I quote, "The background of a profound national commitment to the principle that debate on public issues should be uninhibited, robust, and wide open, and it may well include vehement, caustic, and sometimes unpleasantly sharp attacks on government and public officials." That was actually a libel suit by a police commissioner, and the Supreme Court decided in favor of free speech. There are many other lawsuits, and I could list them all, and I'm happy to provide them to you. But I'm sure you've done your due diligence. If so, you know that you actually can't limit what people say or how they say it. You may limit the time, but not the content, including names, language, tone, and even swearing. Not that that often happens here. Nor should you want to. This is the most people we typically have at a meeting. Our public comment before meetings does not inhibit the business of this board, and very few people ever even speak. To restrict free speech by requiring only agenda items be discussed at the beginning of meetings, requiring people to sign in, or dictating what your view of decorum is to be followed, all serve to be nothing more than creating a power grab and control move. You literally can't constitutionally make the proposed changes. Thank you.
Did Lori Fernay?
All right, well, good evening, everyone. Lori Fernan, 15 Camille Lane, and I'm going to start by saying I love Eric Wellman. I so appreciate what you have done for your terms in service to this town, and I appreciate that of all of the Board of Selectmen. You regularly are here being abused by the public, and with rights come responsibilities. And although we cannot quash free speech, I don't agree with that at all, but people should also be mature and decent and kind, because that's what we want here in Simsbury. So I'm here tonight just to say thank you so much for the work that the 3 Democratic Board of Selectmen members have done. It is greatly appreciated, and it has not gone unrecognized. And I also want to thank our first and the Republican members here, because you all are doing difficult work, and we do have challenges in town, and we do have debate, but we can do it in a way that's civil and kind. So I look forward to future debates, and we will do it in a way, or at least I will participate in a way that is decent. And I make that commitment, and I hope others here will make that commitment also. It doesn't mean you can't be passionate. It also doesn't mean you can't be angry. But we cannot be name calling. We cannot be insulting people. We cannot have the kind of personal attacks that I see regularly on television, because I'm not very often at the meetings. The final thing I wanted to say is thank you to the staff. As a government employee, I know very much how difficult it is to interact and engage with the public. And as someone who works really hard, as the people that I've engaged with at Town Hall do, I totally appreciate the work you've done. And thank you from me and on behalf of Simsbury. All right, thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you, Lori.
My name is Julie Fazwitz. I'm at 87 Cambridge Crossing. I am one of the houses that were labeled on the agenda today in terms of the issue with the tax foreclosure. And I really just wanted to follow up with what Katie had said so eloquently. Being that I am in one of those homes, it does really cause great deal of concern, as I have a family with 2 young children. We are first entering into the town of Simsbury with the hopes of open arms and collectiveness as a community. And as much as we are trying to battle a lot in Cambridge Crossing, I do feel some support from the town, which has been very appreciative. I understand the need to move forward with amounts that are due, but within that discussion, I think it would also be important to, if that does move forward, to be able to discuss how those that are either 90% completed or already in, because I know I'm not the only other person, or who have already invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into these homes, how it's going to directly affect us, and if I need to prepare to move my children out of this home. So lots of anxiety, but we do thank you for the support thus far, and I just think that we do need to address it in more of a detailed fashion rather than it just saying yes or no. And that's it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here for public audience?
My name is Mary Lou Barcelo. I live at Riley Road, Newtok, and I am affected directly because we were supposed to move into 108 Cambridge Crossing. my question was just to follow up to Katie's, as if they are foreclosed, do we have any option to buy those houses? That would be the question. And, how would we go about it?
Thank you.
Here was the shortest one.
Let's, hold on, see if everyone else has spoken before I'm allowed to let somebody back up here. Are you adding more content than was presented already?
No, I was going to say, yes, that was well said, and
Okay,
I kind of didn't say it that way, but
okay.
I agree.
Um,
I also live in Cambridge Court. My name's John, rather not give my last name, but we can talk about that later if you feel a need to, off the record, get it. But I think like my fellow neighbors have said, well said, some of the challenge we've had. I'm not sure everybody quite knows all those, and I'd encourage you to look at the numerous lawsuits against our developer. They're in the dozens now, and a lot of people have been taken advantage of, and that is, under the watch of everybody, right? And so I do think there's an opportunity to see how the town can help to stop this from happening, because there are people, from what I understand, that are putting down deposits as we speak, or recently, and they're not getting houses built. And with the lawsuits that are happening, I'm candidly not sure that they're ever going to get any money, so or a house. So I do also want to speak out on behalf of the people that are in homes that are renting them back because they can't close because of liens that the developers put onto those homes because they're not paying their vendors, and they're in very difficult positions. So we all empathize with them, but if there is help that the town can provide, I think that would be appreciated. And then the last thing that I do want to say is that, and none of you all, I believe, were a part of this conversation when the development was approved, but there was no financial securities or bonds put on any of the infrastructure. So we're in a situation where if our developer does not make it through, we would like to make sure that there's somebody advocating for this community, because if it is resold, then whoever buys it should have to uphold the same standards that I believe the town would put on a developer if they were building a road. They would make sure that there's financial securities or drainage, et cetera. So the way Cambridge Crossing was approved is, from what I understand, is we are responsible for the sewers, for the roads, for the sidewalks, and for the lighting. And if any of you care to drive by, you will see that they're all in very, very bad states, considering the amount of tax revenue that we are committing to the town of Simsbury. We don't get the service to begin with, but we could use your support. So if things do or don't work with the current developer, we would love to see folks get invested and support us, because it's been a challenge. We have had conversations with the Attorney General that's said that, we're challenged given our HOA situation, and haven't really gotten anything actionable. So like I said, if anybody's in the neighborhood and want to drive by, we're right off Hoskins, swing by, you'll see that if you were building a $650,000 house there, you probably would be really disappointed with the state of that neighborhood. Nobody's fault here, but I think we all have the opportunity to rectify it as situations present themselves in the future. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here who would like to speak for public audience? Oh, we do have someone online. I can't see a name or anything, so whoever's online.
Hi, this is Parik. Can I speak? I'm online.
Yes, yep. Yep.
Okay, I'm also one of the house waiting to be delivered from Cambridge Crossing. As others said, right, like last 2 years we are waiting. It's like more than a year, the closing date of the house, but still we did not get the house. But this year he made a lot of progress, put on structures and roof, but after that the plumbing and electricals are still pending. But as others said, like we have invested so much energy and money into that, so we don't know how this is going to impact the future of us actually. So as others said, like as a buyer, like we like to hear like what town is going to make a decision, but they want us to consider all of us who are getting impacted by not the fault of us. So thanks for whatever the town is doing, but we just want better solution for us in this situation and whatever the help you can provide us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here that would like to speak for public audience? You know, I'm supposed to say that 3 times. I usually don't say it 3 times, so I'm going to say going once, going twice. Sorry. I will make a comment that I hope you can stay for the discussion, the tax lien discussion, because we have our tax collector here, our town manager here. I believe our planning director will be here, public works director will be here. And we'll have a discussion on what it means. And I think our town attorney will be joining us, so he can weigh in on what this means to you and to us. You do have to sit through a few presentations, but maybe you'll find them fascinating. With that, I would like to turn this over to the presentation portion. I hope that people keep to a 15-minute time frame, 5-minute time frame?
Oh, sorry. Is that out loud?
15, normally we say 15 minutes for a presentation, so that would be great if it's shorter, if you can get it done. But we first have Aaron Levitt-Smith, the chairman of the Planning Commission, and Glenn Chalder, who has been helping with the POCD to do a presentation.
I will guarantee you this is going to be less than 15 minutes, so everyone can clap for that. So again, I'm Erin Levitt-Smith. I'm chair of the Planning Commission here in Simsbury, and I'm joined by Glenn Chalder, our consultant on the POCD. So we just wanted to update the Board of Selectmen. We're going to be updating the Zoning Commission next week. So we started with our revision of the POCD. It really began last year. The Planning Commission realized that we really needed to update language and really update some issues in the POCD, and didn't want to wait the full 10 years, which would have been 5 years more. So we engaged Glenn to be our consultant again. He was our consultant for 2017, and he began working with us. He started with an online survey that was at the end of the last calendar year, November through the holidays. We had over 600 people, I believe, respond, 650 or 60 people respond to that. We've had several community meetings that was very well attended at Henry James Middle School, where we had over 100 people there to participate in the activities and give us feedback. And we've had many commission workshops, weekly meetings to synthesize all of the information from the online survey, and our community meetings. 2 weeks ago, our last meeting in June, we had a public meeting where the public could come and give comments. That was very well attended. That was at the library. Glenn is now in the process of synthesizing all of those public comments. We have a meeting tomorrow where we're going to begin taking a look at that. And we're looking forward to adjusting and revising the draft as we move forward. And so we will be making those tweaks. I want to say, before I have Glenn come up and tell you about our next steps, I just want to express my gratitude to the town staff, especially George McGregor, and to Glenn Chalder, who have been wonderful to work with. They've been wonderful partners. George and his staff have been nothing but really attentive and just very organized. And I just want to go on record as saying I think we're very fortunate to have both of them working with the Planning Commission and working with us on this POCD.
Good evening, I'm Glenn Chalder. I've had a pleasure of working with the Planning Commission on the update of the POCD. My role tonight is simply sort of explain to you what the next steps are. As Aaron indicated, we've prepared a draft. We revised the draft with the Planning Commission to make sure it reflected their thoughts and feelings on issues for the POCD. Had a public meeting, got additional feedback. We're going to be tweaking the plan and going through all those comments. We've written them all out, cataloged every comment that we got. And then at some point in time, the commission is likely to go ahead and move towards adoption of the plan. Under Connecticut state law, the Planning Commission is the statutory authority to adopt the plan. Statutes do require that the plan be referred to the Board of Selectmen with an opportunity for your comment if you so choose. It's a 65-day window that the statutes provide for, and that's something that you will, again, receive the official notification from us of the intended date. The only other thing I wanted to pass on at this point in time is the Planning Commission is considering the possibility of doing a prioritization exercise of the recommendations in the plan. Part of the reason for our update of the POCD this time is there wanted to be a focus on implementation. To create a plan but not do anything with it is painful to me as a professional planner. And so we're bringing the best practices from communities around the state to suggest this might be something that could work well for Simsbury. And in essence, what we would ask each of you to do and other boards and commissions involved in the land use fields is to identify the priorities that resonate most with you and you think are best for our community. And that way we can now focus our efforts on doing those things. There's many recommendations in the plan, some of which we've broken the recommendations down into what we call policies, which are ongoing guidelines, I guess we'll call them, for when you're making decisions. If you wanted to think about plan consistency, you would look at the policies and say, yes, it is or is not consistent. On the other hand, the real meat in the plan is what we call action steps, which is modify the zoning regulations to do this, or modify the subdivision regulations to do that. And this is where your guidance and assistance would be helpful. So we may have some summer homework for you. We haven't decided to do this yet. We're going to talk about it. But you may see us more than you would like over the next month or two.
Just a question on that. Are those guidance or binding? Those
The
actions?
POCD?
The action steps.
The action step, the Plan of Conservation and Development is an advisory document. It's meant to reflect the input from the residents, from the survey, the public meetings, from the board and others. But it does not have force of law. There could be pandemics or other things like that would happen that would reset the priorities. But that's part of the reason why the state asked for the plan to be updated every 10 years is to continue to do it. And Simsbury said, you know what, a lot's happened in the last 5. Let's go there. So it is intended to be advisory.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Lynn, I have a question, and then I'll let, if anybody else has a question up here. Is there any room or possibility to have a special meeting between the Planning Commission and the Board of Selectmen to go through this and talk about it in together in public so that we can hear what each other has to say, hear what the Planning Commission has to say, and bounce it off of each other?
That's a great suggestion. We're getting together tomorrow night in terms of the schedule. We are not under a strict statutory timeframe or guideline. In some situations in state law, if a plan is older than 10 years, then the town is ineligible for state discretionary grants. We're not there, so we don't have a specific timeframe. We're just trying to move ahead purposefully. So I think if it's okay, I'll pass that suggestion along, and I think that we're very much interested in being here tonight and meeting with others to get support and cooperation moving forward, so.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Quick question. So when as we do in life, most often when we update something or change our perspective, it's in response to something that we had that knowledge of or something new that was presented to us. So it's natural that we're at this point, I would think, to a certain extent. Would it be appropriate or inappropriate, because it could be a rabbit hole we don't want to go down, I'll trust that, but would it be appropriate for us to potentially, as you're doing the report out of the changes, substantive changes, what may or may not have occurred or didn't occur because of our POCD? Is that possible as well?
Yeah, I think the introduction to the plan contains kind of an overview of part of the reason or rationale for the Planning Commission picking this up and rolling with it. A lot of it sort of centered around the pandemic in terms of the changes, both in terms of people's use of technology, right here, OWL, for example, but in terms of school, et cetera. There was a comment at the public meeting that the plan is only focused on that, and that's not true. The issue is much has changed in our world in the last 5 years, particularly the focus on housing, for example, and other things in terms of our economy and what's happened with occupancy of commercial space, which is important to our tax base, and so on. So we just wanted to kind of refresh those ideas and ask the community for their thoughts and input as to what they felt in terms of the direction we were going. So none of those was a predominant or major driver, if you will, but all of it kind of got together and said, it's important for us. Simsbury is such a great community to just make sure that we touch base with people and understand what the issues and needs and desires are in this day and age.
Can I make a comment too? I'm sorry. No, Stephen. I think one of the major focuses for us too was the DEI. And there were so many changes and things that came to our attention when we were doing the affordable housing plan and the wording in the POCD. And so we wanted to take a look at the affordable housing, but also, was this document sensitive to wording? Was it sensitive to DEI? And then the sustainability piece. And so Glenn's done a great job weaving that language and the DEI and the sustainability throughout the POCD. So that was really the catalyst, but Glenn is right, the pandemic. But I just wanted to point out, because I think that's a really important message. And we've had some really interesting discussions with some of the board members that have really challenged some of the ways that we've taken a look at how we present it. So I think it's a more sensitive document in that way, and it improves on our POCD from 2017.
Thank you. Thanks.
I have a question.
Oh, sure.
You mentioned, getting together and having a discussion going through this with the Board of Selectmen, but how much discussion has there been, or do you anticipate there being with the Board of Zoning? Because it seems like really a lot of this is touching on zoning issues that control this, not so much, Board of Selectmen, although we can help set a tone and drive things from a policy standpoint as much as we can. It seems like the real integration needs to happen with zoning.
I think that's, as Aaron indicated, next week, we have we're meeting with the zoning commission next week to do the similar type of situation. There's no doubt that if we were to look at the action steps in terms of things that the plan recommends actually be done, the zoning commission is very involved in that. So their support and their interest going forward is important, but also the voices of residents is important to communicate to them as well. So that's our hope and desire, is to get everybody on Team Simsbury moving ahead, and they're key players, as you are.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We beat the 15 minutes today.
Close enough, close enough.
Good. It's close. The next item we have our fire district president and our Simsbury Volunteer Fire Company chief to come up and discuss the district fee proposal for permits. Or Gary's coming.
Good evening, all. I'm Gary Wilcox, and I am the president of the Simsbury Fire District. And just so everyone has an understanding, and for the benefit of many of the public members here, the fire district is a separate standalone municipality, if you will, a taxing authority by charter from the way that the fire district was initially established here in Simsbury in 1944. So think of it as a municipality within a municipality, and we have our own tax base and our own budget and our own meetings and everything else. But we're all the town of Simsbury, and we work very, very well together. We work very seamlessly together. As a matter of fact, many people don't even realize that it is actually a separate organization. But all that being said, is that we take care of our own budget, which is really only 3% of the whole huge Simsbury budget, but nevertheless, we're very proud of our 3% that we have, and with that, we provide all the fire protection for the town, and have for almost the last 80 years. In analyzing our budget, we have targeted some areas in which there are certain efforts of time and labor and materials that the fire district and the fire marshal's office has to do as far as inspecting and plan reviews and inspections, et cetera, mainly with the business community, because for the most part, the fire marshal's office deals with the public buildings and not residential buildings. So single-family homes don't fall under the fire marshal's jurisdiction. That's all in the building department. But so one of the areas that we have identified where it does take some time and resources and dollars from the fire marshal's office is when someone comes in and takes out a building permit for a commercial building. And the fire marshal's office is required to come in and do a plan review and do a series of inspections, large or small, depending upon the scale of the building, until that project is completed and there's a certificate of occupancy, and now the building is up and functional. That, up until this point, the cost of doing that is just spread across our entire tax base. 87% of our tax base is residential, 17% is commercial. And where, with the day-to-day inspections that the fire marshal's office is required to do, the 17% of our commercial tax base does pay for that inspection cost and whatnot. But again, when someone comes in and takes out a building permit, they go to the town hall and they take out a building permit and they pay a fee, which presently is $14.26 per $1,000 of construction cost. And out of that money, that goes to the building department, and that defrays their cost of plan review and inspection, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. On the commercial side of it, when that happens and our fire marshal's office has to do lesser amount, but still the same things that the building department does, we really have no revenue that offsets that through a building permit. And again, we've just spread it across the tax base. So we've kind of identified that as, hey, this is something that is a targeted expense, if you will, but is really being picked up by all the taxpayers' tabs. So we would just like to bring that into perspective and say, you know what, we, like other towns or some other towns, which they have a separate fire marshal's fee for the building permit. And we're looking to, the district is going to, in the very near future, decide on doing just that and come out with an ordinance that would create a building permit fee for the fire district. We're targeting where I had said that the building department presently is $14.26. The fire district is looking at $5 per 1,000, not $14.26. And other towns to compare to, we've got Manchester as an example that charges $7 per $1,000, and we've got South Windsor that's somewhere in $6 or $7. So we're actually a little bit below the range there in looking at $5 on that. So our whole reason for doing this is to again kind of make sense out of how our income targets our expenses, and we think that makes sense. And the decision, of course, is a district decision. And what we're here for is asking the town of Simsbury to work with us in cooperation with that, very much similar to the way that we've always run for almost 80 years. We have shared the expense of our tax collector, and when residents or businesses get their tax bill, it comes in one envelope on one sheet, and it says Town of Simsbury taxes, 30 however many mills, and the fire district at 1 mill, and there's your total. One check, send it in. If you come down to town hall, one check, one visit, and you pay all of your taxes. We don't ask the resident to then go down to the firehouse and pay their fire district taxes. So it's a perfect system. It works very well. And like I say, we pay our fair share of doing that, and because we share the cost of the tax collector. So we're looking to do the very same thing with the building department, so that when that customer comes in to take out a building permit with one form, and the box is on the form now anyway, does it require fire marshal authorization? And if that's checked yes, then there will be the fee for the fire marshal's office that would go on there. And at that time, the applicant of the building permit pays with one check, one stop, and they're all done. And then everything else happens automatically from there. We'd rather not have it where the person's going to be told, okay, you went through this whole building permit process and now go down to the firehouse and do it all over again. So again, we're trying to streamline it. We're trying to do things together and have it make sense. And so that's where we've come to you, and I sent the email out and was distributed for your consideration on that. And we're certainly happy to do the same setup as the tax collector with share whatever cost we agree with on there to make that work and make it work for the taxpayers of Simsbury. And there are other, the state of Connecticut does allow the fire marshal's offices to do charge for many of their services, but we are in very firm belief, and it's our philosophy, that businesses pay a lot of taxes, and that is included when you pay your tax bill. And we're not looking to institute any kind of a fee system where, like some other towns, where they'll charge $150 for an annual daycare inspection, they'll charge $150 for a liquor license inspection, which is required annually. And so that we feel is a true burden to the business community, and we're not looking to add to that at all. But the building permit is something where they're paying for what they're receiving, and it's not being paid by the rest of the taxpayer base. So there you go, and we are off to our 7 o'clock district
Okay,
meeting.
thanks. I just want to comment. So Lee, this would be something that you would be working to administratively negotiate with the fire district, and then
Yes.
would you bring that back to us to approve the agreement at that time? Or is that something that we're just here to get information on it?
Yeah, I think I would just report the results
Okay.
of my negotiation process. We've got an excellent relationship, and I think this could work very well as well.
Okay.
We won't have the opportunity to have Gary or the chief back, right? So can I ask a question?
Tonight?
Yeah. I mean, at a future meeting, it sounds like your guys are gonna. So my question is, I think that well said, and I appreciate it, Gary. The town of Simsbury, I think the majority of the residents don't know that the depth of the work that the fire marshal does with the commercial side of our populations. And I mean, I think most of the town of Simsbury recognize that we have the premier volunteer fire department in the area.
Thank you very much.
It's to go. I mean, come on. Along with everything else in this town, but we have the premier volunteer fire. In your research, I'm going to counter out there. Are there hybrid models out there? We've talked many times in this board about shared services. So are there hybrid models out there amongst some of those towns where the fire marshal's duty are institutionalized in the planning and building department of town hall, thus to take care of so you talk about streamlining the process. I can't think of a more streamlined process than having it part of the initial process that a commercial builder or investor goes through versus having it two separate entities.
Well,
Is that a model out there or not?
In the majority of towns, there are only 26 towns in the whole state that have fire districts, right? So the vast majority don't have a fire district, but they all have a fire department, they all have a fire marshal's office. And that is the same as you've got a tax assessor, you've got a tax collector, you've got a clerk, and I mean, you have all of your different departments. So in those towns, the fire department, the fire marshal's office it's a separate office, it's a separate department. And they do the same exact functions that we do. It's just that the billing is just different. So said differently, is there a way to internalize that function, though, moving forward potentially? So into the planning and building department here, if we're talking about efficiencies and saving money and and having two rates, it's an idea. We should be thinking about these types of evolution of our government and of our structure in town. I understand how we're doing it today and have for 80 years. But is there a way, actually, if the point is to streamline the process and not charge an individual more potentially and allocate the monies that the taxpayers are paying for their fire services to fire prevention, is there a way to do that through a different mousetrap? I think that what you would find with that is that, and as I said, presently the town of Simsbury charges $14.26. They don't have to pay for their fire marshal's office. If there was a way that the fire marshal's office was streamlined, commingled, however, hybrid, whatever then you would have more expenses and you'd have to charge more. So there wouldn't be any savings. It's just that what we're looking at now is the building department charges $14.26. We charge $5. That's $19.26. So it's still the math is going to work out the same either way. There are some towns that charge as much as $20 for their building permit process. But out of that $20, internally, they are paying for their fire marshal and fire department and everything else.
Yeah, I understand the math. I'm thinking about evolving the process. by
Chris, I think
which
the answer to your
these
question is
permits-
we'd have to take the fire marshal services internally, and
Right.
that's not going to work in the
Not
current
all
model.
of them, I'm just
Yeah.
saying that.
They're not
Yeah.
for sale.
Yeah. I get what you're saying.
Not
but
all of them. I'm not saying all of them.
I think it's more complicated than we might realize. But your point is fair. Is there a way to integrate the process
The
better?
question has to be, these are the types of questions we should be asking.
Yeah,
as
there
we
should be.
evolve our-
Just from a procedural standpoint, I believe if we're going to enter into a contract, this board would have to approve it. So, because
If there's a formal contract, then yes, the board would need to approve it, yes.
Yeah, I don't know how it was originally done in 1944. I wasn't here. But we would.
Surprisingly, I
need-
wasn't
sure.
either, but yeah.
I know that. But yeah, there would need to be some MOU or whatever that would define that, absolutely. Of course.
Right.
Right, thank
Thanks,
you.
Gary.
Thank you.
I'm gonna do I almost forgot the proclamation for Parks and Rec Month. So we have Tom Taberski here, Culture, Parks and Rec Director. I'm not sure if you want to say anything about National Parks and Rec Month.
You've all said it very well before. We have a great team over there, and we're excited to showcase some of our events this summer at the Flower Bridge and Turkville Park at Simsbury Farms, and we appreciate the support that this board has shown us since I've been here. You guys have been nothing but supportive to the Parks and Recreation Department, and I hope you continue to do so.
Okay, thanks. Well, I think we're going to read the proclamation. And I just want to say, I think I'd like to thank again all your staff. And I see a lot of creativity and new programs that you guys are coming out with all the time. So it's a lot of fun stuff for people that live in town and some that don't live in town. So Heather, do you want to start with the proclamation?
I have the original here. Do you want to pass? Do you have it on
Did you
your-
sign it?
Do you need it, Heather? Do you have, you're the lead
We
off.
have a copy.
Yep, yep.
I need it.
Thank
you. Whereas Parks and Recreation is an integral part of communities throughout this country, including Simsbury, and
Trying to find it.
Here.
This packet's
There
huge.
we go.
Whereas Parks and Recreation promotes health and wellness, improving the physical and mental health of people who live near parks, and
Whereas Parks and Recreation promotes time spent in nature, which positively impacts mental health by increasing cognitive performance and well-being and alleviating illnesses such as depression, attention deficit disorders, and Alzheimer's. And
Whereas Parks and Recreation encourages physical activities by providing space for popular sports, hiking trails, swimming pools, and many other activities designed to promote active lifestyles. And
Whereas Parks and Recreation is a leading facilitator of exciting and engaging community cultural events. And
Whereas Parks and Recreation programming and educational activities such as out-of-school time programming, youth sports, and environmental education are critical to childhood development. And
whereas Parks and Recreation increases a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And
whereas Parks and Recreation is fundamental to environmental well-being of our community, and
whereas Parks and Recreation is essential and adaptable infrastructure that makes our communities resilient in the face of natural disasters and climate change. And
whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And
whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month.
whereas Simsbury recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources, now therefore be it resolved by the Simsbury Board of Selectmen that July is recognized as Parks and Recreation Month in the town of Simsbury.
we have a signed proclamation here, but I don't have the folder right now, so. Okay. All right, thanks.
Thank you all very much.
Appreciate your
Hopefully
work.
be able to come out and see us at some of the events this summer, and we've got a lot going on, and we look forward to the big event at the end of the summer at Simsbury Farms, the fireworks and the inflatables and the day at the pool and food trucks, and it'll be a lot of fun.
It was fun last year.
sounds good.
Okay.
Thank
All right,
you.
thanks,
Thank you.
Tom. Okay, I'm gonna do a quick first selectmen's report. I just wanted to thank everyone who came out for the public forum last week with GovHR's Mike Gillet to discuss what we're looking for in a new town manager. Parks and Rec Month, we already did that. I want to congratulate the community band on their 50th anniversary, and if you have time to catch the band playing this Wednesday at the rink. It's Simsbury Granby Rotary Month, and the Rotary was given a proclamation on behalf of all the work that they do in Simsbury and around the world. They are kicking off this awareness looking for new members and starting to plan for changes and improvements to Rotary Park. And I want to say that one of our selectmen, Heather Getz, is a newly member of the Rotary, Simsbury Granbury Rotary. And also congratulations to new Sergeants Timothy Russell, who had his promotion ceremony today, and Timothy May, who had his promotion ceremony last week. And I'm going to cut it there, and I'm going to turn it over to Lee Erdman, our town manager.
Thank you very much, Wendy. My apologies for being a little under the weather tonight, but I do have some things I'd like to report. We've made some changes in the town manager's office. We've delegated some additional responsibilities to our acting deputy town manager, and he's absorbed those very well. We've instituted a telephone log, so we actually keep track of the telephone calls coming into the office. We've instituted a tickler system, which is like a follow-up system. So if we send something out to a department, we want it back by a certain time. If it's not back, we'll call that department and say, where is that? You know, how you doing on it? We've installed a time stamp, so we actually stamp things in when they come into the office. We've instituted weekly town manager office staff meetings. So we share information among all the folks, not a lot of folks, 4 folks in our office. Our IT department is going to reinstitute a website users group, which has been dormant for a while. The website is maintained by individual departments. It's a decentralized methodology that we have, and we're going to do additional training of department staff on how to update the website and do a better job of keeping it up to date going forward. We're going to be developing a new budget presentation format based on best practices. We've made some progress in recent years, and the information we provide to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, and we want to continue along that path to provide the best possible information in the best possible format to make it easier for you all to make the decisions you need to make. On the town manager selection process, the Board of Selectmen has a draft position announcement, which you're reviewing. We may discuss a little further later tonight. You should receive a draft candidate brochure by the end of tomorrow. And although we've slipped a little bit in the initial stages, we're still on target for collecting resumes from potential candidates by August 16th. And very quickly, Department News and Notes, Library has been awarded a grant from the Connecticut Humanities Council for $1,385 to initiate a program called Simsbury History and Culinary Storytelling. And that program will be coming this fall. The Simsbury Public Library Book Bike program was initiated last week. And so the Book Bike goes to all the elementary schools to allow for checking out of books in the school parking lots, taking home crafts and additional items. The schedule is Mondays, Squadron Lane, Tuesdays, Latimer Lane, Wednesdays, Terrafil, Thursdays, Tooten Hills, and Fridays, Central. Culture, Parks, and Recreation. Concerts coming up this summer, free concerts in the local parks. Upcoming events are scheduled for July 11th, July 18th, July 25th, August 9th, and August 16th. All the events will be at 6:30 p.m. At various locations. More information is available on the SimsburyRec.com website and the department's Facebook page. And then the Culture, Parks and Recreation Department will be hosting a summer flick and float movie at the pool on Friday, August 11th at 6 p.m. Going to be a presentation of the Super Mario Brothers on a large LED screen. Again, more information available on the website. and on the Facebook page. And I did distribute to the Board of Selectmen this afternoon. We got a email from our Public Works Director that the Farmington River is rising, is expected to crest tomorrow. If it reaches 13.3 feet, the town will be closing Terry's Plain, Riverside North, Route 315, and Nod Road. We'll certainly get a communication out to the public if we have to do that. And I think that's my report. Thank you.
A lot. You guys have been busy. So we're gonna go down, see if there's any selectmen reports, or liaison reports. I'll start with Heather.
Yes, I don't have any liaison reports today.
Okay, John?
I don't have anything.
Okay, Amber?
I have a brief one. There are a couple of community conversations scheduled, one for Monday, July 17th from 5:30 to 7 at Eno Hall Auditorium, one on Thursday, July 20th, 1:30 to 3 in the youth room at Eno Hall. And this is because the senior center was the recipient of some money from the state. These are additional ARPA funds that was given out through the state Connecticut Department of Aging and Disability. And it is money that is being used to still combat some of the lasting effects of the pandemic, and especially with our senior community looking to combat some of the effects of isolation that has been on the community. So there are going to be some conversations about how our senior center has received will be receiving some of this funding, I think close to $60,000 to be spent at the senior center. For programs that are tied to mitigating pandemic effects. So we are having some community conversations to get input on how best to spend that money. So if you are interested in that, you need to register with the Senior Center by July 13th, and you can check in with Kathleen Marshall, the Senior Center Coordinator, for more information.
Thank you. Eric?
I don't have one.
Chris?
Nothing.
Okay. Before we get into selectmen action, we need to add an agenda item. So I'm looking for a motion to add the agenda item number F in relation to appointing Ed LaMontagne.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I do have one question. Do we need, are we going to do the meeting for the executive search committee, which is the non-notice meeting at the end of this, or are we not going to do that?
Well, I would encourage that so we can get all the feedback back to
Yeah.
our consultant.
Okay, but so the question I have is it an executive session, but since they've been non-notice meetings, we just have to say that we're adding a non-notice meeting
Yes,
after adjournment?
That would be fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Correct.
we don't need to vote on that, do we?
No.
No, okay, so now you know, we're having a non-notice meeting after. Yep.
Also, the appointment is letter B under appointments and resignation, not letter F.
Oh, under appointments and, thank you. Thank you, Tom. Okay. Okay, now we're getting to the tax lien sale. We're going to start talking about that. We need our tax collector to join us. She has left, and I believe our town attorney is going to join us.
Yes, he is expected to be here momentarily.
Okay. Oh, there's, okay, do you want me to move down
Want me
to?
to introduce the item?
Sure,
Um,
yes, I
sure.
do.
We are proposing tax lien sale and a series of tax foreclosures. The tax lien sale would be on the properties indicated on Wolcott Road, Terriffill Road, Nod Road, Woodchuck Hill Road, Lark Road, and 50 Great Pond. I believe I'm correct in stating that the town has not done a tax lien sale in the past. We have attempted tax sales. They have not been very successful, at least not in recent years. We're also proposing tax foreclosures on parcels at Cambridge Court, Hoskins Road, West Mountain Road, and Mountain View Road. We last did a tax foreclosure sale back in 2007. And my understanding is at the very last minute, the property owner or owners actually paid the taxes, and we did not have to go through that process. Let's see, Colleen, would you like to provide a little more detail in terms of the collections that that these property owners are behind in? Totals $1,009,000 for the tax liens and $208,000 for tax foreclosures. And there is a lengthy process involved in these, so the action we're looking for the board to take tonight would be to approve us to move forward in that process.
Right, this is just to move us forward in the process.
Oh, you're
Bob's gonna explain.
I didn't see you.
Why not? Bob will explain the difference to you between the both. Like I said, we haven't done them. We did we came up with the tax sale policy, I think it was in 2018.
Yes.
All the properties that we're proposing to do the tax lien sale on were in, except for the Simsbury Real Estate Holding. Those were all in the tax sale last time, and nobody bid on any of the properties. Most of them are vacant, vacant land. So we're proposing to try to do it through a tax lien sale, which a lot of times, it's like an investment company who comes in and pays. We're bundling them, we're not selling them separately. So they would come in and buy the bundle. One of the reasons they do like, a lot of cities do this for vacant property or abandoned buildings, is they can collect the 18% interest on it. Then it's up to them to foreclose if they want on the property. So those are those ones on top are the ones that we're proposing to do the tax lien sale on. Tax foreclosure ones, the town has more control over those as opposed to throwing them into a tax lien sale and just having somebody else come in and buy them, or a tax sale and doing an actual auction here like we did on a tax sale. We actually would hold the auction here like we did last time. The tax foreclosure, it's through the courts, and the town does have a little bit more control over that. And those do take a much longer time. I mean, they can take, the one that we tried years ago, I think it was 2.5 years that we were in court doing that. And like Lee said, the day before we were supposed to go to court, he came in and paid everything. So then it was, not put through. I don't know, I mean, you have the amounts total of everything for each
Attorney
one.
DiCrescenzo is in the parking lot, so he'll be
He's
here
in the-
very shortly, and he does have some very important information to share in terms of the questions raised by members of the audience earlier tonight. And we do feel strongly that this process, the tax foreclosure process, is most likely to end in a result that is going to be acceptable to all parties versus doing a tax lien sale where we essentially lose control.
There he is.
Here's Attorney DiCrescenzo right now, perfect timing.
Come on up. They were just asking if you want to go over a little bit of the difference between the tax lien sale and tax foreclosure, why we would have a little bit more control, and hopefully to benefit mostly the Cambridge Court.
Yes, yes. There are three ways under the statute to collect unpaid taxes.
One is the tax sale, which you recall a couple of years ago, we did a tax sale. That's non-judicial, meaning it doesn't go through the courts. It's a series of public notices and an auction, really, of the properties for which the tax sale is held. The second way is a tax foreclosure, which we're recommending for certain properties on this list. And that's a standard foreclosure proceeding. You bring an action, civil action in Superior Court, and you foreclose the tax lien, which, once you don't pay your taxes, it creates a lien, and then Colleen every year files a list of the liens, which you may have seen. And the board set a policy a few years back that set parameters for those tax delinquent properties and what to do once a property reaches, I think it's 3 years, Colleen?
3 years, yeah.
3 years and a certain amount of arrearage. The direction from the board was take action as appropriate to collect those taxes, which is the list you see in front of you tonight. The third way to collect taxes is by selling the tax lien, which is authorized by General Statutes 12-195H. That process requires a resolution of the board, the legislative body, in this case, the Board of Selectmen. It used to be a very simple one-line statute until a few years ago, the legislature did what the legislature does, which is make it much more complicated. But the basic premise is you don't have to foreclose the taxes in the name of the town. You can actually sell the tax lien through some form of notice to the public. And most towns and cities put them out to bid. And the bidders come in, they can bid 100 cents on the dollar, or 80 cents on the dollar, or 110 cents on the dollar. Now, why is that attractive? It's attractive because that tax lien carries an 18% per year interest rate, which compounds every month at 1.5%. It's one of the best investments you can make because the collateral is normally very, very good, and it accumulates at 18%. The attractiveness of a tax lien sale rather than a tax foreclosure is it's a much simpler process. You put the list out to bid. There's a very strong group of, or large group of entities that bid on tax liens. They're set up to do it. They're investment funds. They're very big financial firms. And then you sell to the highest bidder. You can also do an RFQ for it so that you have a little bit more selectivity in, choosing the purchasers of the tax liens. There's one property on the list that has been around for a very long time. We think has some environmental issues with it. We put it out to tax sale a few years ago and got no bidders, even though it's a fairly large property. And it's my view that if we sell the tax lien, we may get more action on that particular one. Now, how did we choose between tax lien and tax foreclosure? And on the Cambridge Crossing arrearage, which is fairly significant, it was our judgment that the tax foreclosure process would give the town more control and discretion as to timing, and really could serve as a mechanism to bring all the parties together to resolve not only the tax arrearage, but all of the other struggles with that particular subdivision. So we're recommending a tax foreclosure. That takes a little time to put together. Now I want to really stress that we would only be foreclosing that land for which there are taxes due. And I don't know if you went into this before I got here.
No, we just.
But on that property, if someone buys a house, closes on the house, gets a deed, and has paid their taxes, we're not foreclosing that property. We're foreclosing the property that the developer still owns, that the taxes aren't paid. Yes.
Can I just, most of the people that are still here tonight are Cambridge Crossing people,
Sure.
and they've expressed a lot of concerns
Oh, yes.
about the impact of a foreclosure on their properties, the money they've investment, work that's left undone. And so I think as our board, we would like to know, they're coming to us and to all of us to address this concern. if we were to approve this, you know, where do they stand? What happens to their equity and homes and things like that?
Yeah, well, that's another reason why we want to do it with tax foreclosure rather than a tax lien sale. We dictate what gets foreclosed and doesn't get foreclosed. And you can be sure that at your direction, we're only going to foreclose the property, the land that is tax delinquent. And if you live in Cambridge Crossing and if you paid your taxes, Colleen knows who's paid and not paid. That won't be part of this foreclosure action. None of those people who are not delinquent in their taxes will be part of it. But I'm going to say half of the subdivision is still owned by Francine, do you happen to know?
There's still 40 parcels that have not
That are
been.
owned by the developer, and that's where the tax arrearage is.
So clarify for me, Bob, how we can have occupied property that's in arrears here?
Can I provide a little insight?
No, I don't. You cannot.
Yeah, sorry.
Occupied property that's in arrears?
Right, we have residents in some of these or under contract that are in these properties that are on the foreclosure list tonight.
Yeah, well, those would, once the closing happens, to get a release of the tax lien.
They'd have to pay it, right?
Yeah, that will have to come out of, but not from the buyer, from the seller.
Understood, but there are folks that I'm understanding that are, I presume, renting,
Yeah, I've heard of two
that
of
are
those.
renting, that are on the foreclosure action.
I heard one tonight that's on the list.
Yeah.
So we have two issues, we have three issues at hand. We have vacant properties to be built. We have properties under contract that have not yet closed because there's no clean title.
Right.
And then we have folks that are renting properties that are on the foreclosure list.
Yep. In fact, I had a call from a local lawyer today on behalf of one of those owners that is renting.
Right.
And he says, what's going on? I said, well, I can tell you what is on the agenda tonight. The only thing on the agenda tonight is your authorization to let us proceed.
This doesn't actually foreclose the property.
No.
No.
This starts the process.
This would be to try to.
There will be many meetings after
We're
this.
going to go slow, we're going to go carefully, and we are very, very aware of the nervousness that this would cause anyone who lives
Bob,
there.
Is it, going back to starting over again, I apologize. Step one, which we're not talking about here, but step one, what is the barometer for action on step one?
You mean in terms of collecting taxes?
Yeah. Where do we have to take it? What is a trigger for action on
The
step
criteria that was set a few years ago by the board was 3 years.
3 years of
That's for
arrears.
the tax sale.
That's
policy.
I'm saying the first.
It was 3 years or $25,000.
Yeah, I was part of that.
Under,
Yeah.
if it was vacant land, so it didn't have to be 3 years, it could be 1 year.
Right.
If they owed more than 25,000.
Right, and Colleen, we don't wait 3 years. Colleen is always working hard to collect taxes and calling people and finding out what's going on and working out arrangements and.
Right.
Are we at
all that first before you get the list?
Sure. So this is going to sound cold, heartless, I think. I apologize for that, but it's not the intent. It's just to ask a question so we can all better understand. Are we at a point that we're doing this because by our own statutes we have to?
We don't.
have a policy for this. I mean, the town doesn't dictate on when I can do a tax lien sale or a tax foreclosure.
Right.
That's not
So-
up to you guys.
So we're at this. So what we're at this point to potentially take action. Why?
Well, first of all, is the level of taxes that are owed.
Okay, so we're getting to a point where we're not comfortable for the dollars that are owed to the other, and I apologize, the broader taxpayers. Okay,
Right.
that's what we've.
Chris, just to clarify, are you talking about the $1 million? Or are you
Right.
talking, which chunk are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean,
The liens
it
or the
just,
foreclosures?
we're talking about Cambridge. So
that's
the
the
rest of them.
foreclosure. That's the
Those are
foreclosures.
the tax foreclosure.
Yeah, so but are we at a point where we have to take the action?
No, that's entirely up to the tax collector, actually, under the statute. The tax collector decides when and,
And it's more than, it's not just a year. He's just about 3 years.
yeah, this particular property owner met the criteria to take action
I think,
beyond.
to do a tax
do a
sale.
tax
Yes, I
sale.
understand. That's why you're trying to move
And
to.
we're trying not to
what
do
is
that
the-
because this, we have more control and it takes longer.
So can I cut to the, Bob, it's your recommendation that the foreclosure process will potentially drive a better outcome for all parties involved?
I think it could, because
Potentially.
we're gonna name as a defendant the lenders, the banks that are owed money on the property.
Mm-hmm.
And in the normal course, once we bring a tax foreclosure and there's a lender, the bank steps up and pays the taxes,
Which will clear the title.
which will clear
Which
the,
would clear, right,
Yeah.
and that's what happens
But
a lot of
for the
times. They
rest-
get nervous. They don't want to lose their interest, so they go ahead and pay the taxes.
right. They want to protect their priority, because we're ahead of them by statute.
So that
We're
works.
first lien holder always.
But that works depending on how each property is structured. So folks that are under contract, there is no lender yet. There's a potential lender,
Correct.
so that's not gonna, the lender's not part of that for the
Well, I'm talking
rented-
about the lender for the overall property.
Oh, you're talking about the big
the
lender.
developer?
The
developer.
developer's
Yeah.
lender.
Right.
I assume they.
What the individual home buyer needs is a partial release of that mortgage in order to get the closing, and a partial release of all the other liens on the property, of which there are a number.
So what I'm driving at is because when the lender gets involved, they're more likely to drive forward the closings because they have somebody that's willing to take ownership of the property, relieve them of the asset. They remove it from their balance sheet and they move on, right? Because then they get paid.
And if we get paid, then there's no reason to.
We're a small piece of the payment overall, but the
Absolutely.
lender.
Correct.
The lender.
Once we get paid, then we're,
Yeah,
So it's just for, my questions are that this is unique, and again, I apologize for if it being, asking cold questions in public comment, but this is unique because we have three different ownership
Yes.
situations, which our policies previously would never sort of were reflexive of, because we've never found ourselves in this position before.
That's right. In
So-
Simsbury, our firm has handled a very similar situation
Right.
in another town.
So whereas situation, if there were 3 units, unit 1, if it was in the traditional model, if it was in the traditional position, this model would work very cleanly. But the repercussions for units 2 and 3 are different because they're different positional
that's
ownership
right.
positions or completion. So
But to be clear, the recommended action tonight just starts the process. We could terminate the process
At any time.
At any point we want. And again, these take a long time, but what I'm hearing, the upside is we are putting statutory and municipal pressure, which is the priority pressure that can be on any tax lien. We are the first lien on any property, right? So we are the primary pressure. We force this into court. We force the developer to reply, and we manage an outcome with the understanding that we're trying to protect the folks that are under contract as well. And again, we have to primarily collect the taxes that the town is owed. That's our responsibility. But we're able to manage additional outcomes with that municipal leverage is essentially what
It gives us
we're
the
talking about
potential
here.
to do
It
that.
doesn't guarantee the outcomes, but it puts it into play, whereas right now, it sounds like these folks have been in limbo for a long time.
they have.
2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A tax lien is a very, very powerful tool because it's first priority in title.
And that's the recommendation before us tonight, because we have the ability to not only collect taxes, but also move a stalled process along for the betterment of folks that either want to be residents or are residents.
Yeah, the other thing it does, the first thing you do when you bring a tax foreclosure is you get a title search on the property, and that'll help us better understand the totality of the circumstances for this individual property. And that will help too, because we'll know all of the claims against the property. We've done some initial, Colleen has done some
Subdivision lien or
initial.
subcontractor liens, there could be all sorts of things here, right?
There
Yeah.
are.
Right, yeah. It's not pretty, right?
is there
Go ahead, Amber. If we could, my question is about the tax lien sale property. So if you want to follow up on Cambridge Crossing, Chris.
I do, just
Go
Cambridge,
ahead.
just because
Then-
the rest of them,
follow up on that.
The ones you've looked at, it seems, they seem to be
seen them
stuff from the
before.
past, yeah.
Well, I haven't,
Recurring
so that's
night.
why I
Well,
have
yeah,
the
but
question.
they look and smell like things we've seen in the past, unfortunately. But this is so unique because we've got people, and again, I apologize, I'm talking about someone in public comment. But with this process, I'm going to make the assumption that we want someone else being the steward of this neighborhood moving forward. Not only the completion of it, but the care of these people, the care of these concerned citizens, right? That's part of our goal here. So during this process, does that allow us any flexibility relative to whom comes in potentially to approach the owner of the project, the property now? Do we have any
leverage?
do we have any control in that conversation that allows us to make sure that the right person potentially comes in to take over and be their stewards moving forward, or are we not at all part of that process either? Do we just get some other? I was said, wow,
Well-
I'm famous for foul language, but that's okay.
As protective of the rights we have to be for the homeowners, as a municipality, we also have a duty to protect
Right.
everyone, including
Even the bad faith actors.
even the present owner. Now, having said that, there's always an opportunity to have conversations with all affected parties and bring a resolution. In fact, the courts encourage that. So, the outcome we all want is for the subdivision to be finished according to the plans that were approved by the town, and for the people who live at Cambridge Crossing to get the full benefit of what they purchased at closing. So we're going to work towards that goal.
So said another way, essentially, we don't want to have to fully complete any of these foreclosures. We want to use this as an opportunity at the beginning to drive folks
Yeah.
to the table to have an amicable outcome for everybody involved that satisfies the tax liens and the potential taxpayers of the future. However, we may have to proceed all the way to foreclosure. We will have an opportunity to decide along the way,
Yeah.
and future boards will decide whether we finish that process or not.
Right.
So all this does tonight is start the process.
It just starts it, and at any point, you can
We can
tell us.
stop it, we can change
stop.
it, we can settle on some, not on
And
others.
it's all public. I mean, everything we'll
Yes.
do will be filed in court, and everybody can see exactly what we're doing and how we're doing it. And we'll have to get the property appraised, we'll have to do a title search, but that's all down the road.
Yep.
And if people have concerns going forward with the process, I'm sure people in town hall will be happy to answer any questions and concerns.
Yeah. Okay.
So you'll have someone to reach out to.
And then, do you have a question about this? Okay. So about the tax lien sale properties, are any of those occupied or are those all abandoned parcels?
They're all abandoned, except for the Simsbury Real Estate Holding. That is the property at, there's 3 parcels. It's the golf course, the old golf course. And then there's a parcel across the street, and then there's the actual building. So there are renters in that building.
You mean the old cliffside?
Yeah.
So if we do the tax lien sale on those properties, that is essentially selling the tax lien to a third party that will then try to collect it.
Yes.
And then we get a payout because we sell it at a discount.
We
We don't have to be a discount.
We don't always sell it.
Well, we sell it to whatever, to
The
the
highest
best
bidder.
price we could
Right,
get.
right.
And then we're out.
Right.
We're out.
Correct.
Then they can foreclose, they can,
If,
Okay.
on that thought, are we obligated to take that?
Take the bid?
Yes.
No, we always, as with every
Okay,
bid, we
just wanna make
reserve
sure.
the right to reject any and all bids for any reason.
When bid comes in and it comes in on 10 cents on the dollar, we're not obligated. because-
and we're doing these as a bundle. We're
Yep.
not doing it individually.
Okay.
So it's $1 million bucks.
This would be,
$1 million bucks rate of value right now.
But then we are not a party anymore if the third party then is trying to collect on this and with renters or anybody else, we are no longer a party to that transaction. Once we accept the payment, then we are
That's
going to be out of this.
Right.
Okay.
Until
And
the
which
taxes
is
are
why
over
we're
again.
doing the tax foreclosure is different for Cambridge Crossing because we're not introducing a third party in that scenario.
correct.
We will be managing the foreclosure process.
Right.
And I assume if we get all the way to the end of that process, we don't ultimately end up owning the property, right? Because it's just a portion. I mean, I don't know what that, and like, what if none of this leverage works with the developer? Where does the end of the road get us to?
We, are familiar with towns that have gone down this road and end up owning the subdivision.
So that could happen.
Could happen.
Okay.
There'll be a lot of discussions and a lot of voting.
I understand that. I just want to say, like, if what could happen if we play that out.
It could happen.
But also back to the tax liens, usually we put a provision in when we sell tax liens that the purchaser of the tax liens has to buy subsequent tax liens. So if they stay in arrears, the purchaser is obligated to buy the next year and the next year and.
Continue, I mean, it's
So we're
like
not
no
back-
fault
we're not
almost.
back again.
It's a no fault scenario, okay.
Most of the time, Colleen, right, a lot of the top policy is used as leverage, right, too?
Absolutely.
Is to either clear them on the front end or, as you said, to move them on, because administratively, it's not worth it for the town to keep chasing after it, which is another reason why we want this.
We're almost at 3 years of
Yeah.
no response whatsoever.
Also, it's also an equity issue. We have $1 million of unpaid, which is, almost 1% of our entire
Well, that's the
collectibles.
thing,
which is-
Everybody else out.
Tax the mill rate, which affects
Yeah.
everything, so.
Okay, all right, so if there's no more questions, I'm gonna ask for the first motion, effective July 10th, to approve the town of Simsbury to conduct a tax lien sale through a public bid process for the following properties. Do I have to read all the properties, or can I say as written?
As written.
As written. There's,
I'll move that.
Second.
all those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. The second motion is to move effective July 10th, 2023, to approve tax foreclosures on the following properties, to initiate tax foreclosures on the following properties.
I'll make that with the addition as listed.
In the second?
I'll second.
Can I, no.
Do you
can I-
want the
can I-
discussion, I'll say,
Yeah, is that okay?
can we have a discussion, any discussion?
Yeah. No, I guess this first thing I just wanted to share is I'm so sorry for what everybody's going through tonight. I can't imagine anything more stressful than what's going on with your homes. This is obviously a really big, complicated issue that is even larger than the issue that's right in front of us tonight. And it's one that is been slowly coming to our attention, I think increasingly coming to our attention. And this may be the most prudent way to move forward. I'm just feeling like I'd like to meet with some of the folks here and just better understand, your journey and your concerns, and then come back, and maybe this is the right thing to do. I'm just not feeling like I'm prepared to make this vote tonight.
Well, we said we would meet with them, so we can go over everything with them to explain. So we said we would be more than happy to do that.
And I was just gonna say too, I've had some people have reached out to me, I've forwarded them to
Yeah.
Lee, to George, so that there's somebody there at the other end of the email. So, did we have a second?
I just have just a quick
Oh,
comment.
discussion, okay.
And I appreciate where my colleague is coming from, but at the same token, all this does is start a very long, complicated process. And if in 2 weeks we come upon information that makes us want to change our mind, we can certainly stop it. So I'm supportive of starting the process, but to Eric's point, absolutely those conversations absolutely need to happen, should happen, and should continue to happen throughout that process. And I'm very confident that Colleen and Attorney DiCrescenzo and our town manager will be responsive. If for some reason any of those parties are not, second and fourth Monday of the month, our email addresses are public. There are lots of ways to get us. Whether we change the agenda items or not, you can yell at us. There's lots of ways to make sure that we're paying attention to this. So I think we're all pretty clear on our intent tonight, at least to be very communicative and responsive on this issue.
But in support of what Eric said, if any one of you, I would encourage, Eric's he's a good listener, so if anybody does want to take him up personally, I reach out to him, so I support that.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I just wanted to, I'll move forward with that.
Okay, so that's, vote, okay.
Can I just add one other thing related to this
Sure.
item? Obviously, our number one obligation is to make sure that the town is paid for the taxes that are owed. But I'm very concerned about how this could potentially impact residents, and if there's any opportunity, if this is going to have any consequences for them that are unintended, I would want to understand what that is quickly so that we could put the brakes on this. And I just invite anybody here to, shoot us an email, leave me your contact information for any of us, because I just want to make sure that I'm understanding the journey that you're on.
To that point, this is a complicated property. It's a land unit development. It's not a straightforward subdivision. So our next step will be to do a complete title search and more fully understand how this all fits together. I hear what you're saying, and if anything comes up in that title search before any marshal goes out with the lawsuit to serve it, we'll be back and we'll explain the complications,
Makes sense.
complexities of it. So,
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Colleen. Thanks, Bob. Is Tom Roy? Oh. You're gonna see. So this is the Connecticut Department of Agricultural Farm Viability Grant. We did a vote on it in May. We have now a higher amount here, so I'm gonna let Tom tell you the whole scoop on this one.
Okay. Considering the last one, this should be pretty simple. Back in May, we came here looking to submit for a $30,000 Department of Agriculture grant for the community farm out on Wolcott Road. We did that. We had a number of items that we were looking to improve. And after we submitted, their office actually called us and said, can you please submit for more? They were very happy with the grant we submitted. They had additional capacity. So working with them, we submitted for some additional items and brought the total value of the grant up to $35,500. And just today, they actually gave us notice that if this is approved tonight, we will be receiving that grant.
Okay.
So nothing but good news.
Good. Okay, and the in-kind portion, is that gonna be more of like a little cash, but more?
The in-kind, which is 40%, they are looking at the fact that we are leasing the 3 plots to the farmers out there for $1 each. They're taking into account the actual value of that land versus the essentially free price that we're offering it, as well as our utilities. So our in-kind is essentially what we had already committed to with keeping the farm active for this coming season.
Okay, sounds good. All right, looking for a motion effective July 10th, 2023 to authorize resubmission of the 2023 Agricultural Farm Viability Grant to fund repairs to the town-owned community farm at 73 Wolcott Road with a value of $35,000.
Move that.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, thank you, Tom. You're gonna stay up there?
But hang out.
Your favorite topic right here.
Bulky waste.
Talking trash.
Tom, I'll let you talk about the changes in fees.
Sure. As probably all of you are aware, we contract out the operation of our bulky waste facility on Wolcott Road, our landfill. In doing that, the town actually does not put any labor into the operation. It goes 2 days a week, and it's all contracted through Paynes. Paynes has held the contract for a number of years. With the increased cost in recycling over the last few years, which I think most of us are familiar with, Paynes is looking to increase the permit fee for a full year from $25 to $40, and for the 1 week permit from $10 to $15. The overall cost for the operation of the landfill is in line with the other bulky waste facilities in the region, and all in all, the town's receiving a great value. We did an analysis of this. It certainly makes sense, and we would support the increased fee for this year.
Okay. Just about the record, do we know how many people bring their recycling there versus people who have a blue bin?
I tell you, if you go there on a Saturday, it's a place to be. The people who do that are committed. And I will say that it very seldomly on a Saturday, you're not going to see some level of line, 2 or 3 cars deep. Wednesdays are definitely the easier day to go, and I think it's been a great resource. We are probably going to be putting this contract out for rebid next season. In the past, just due to the fact that Paynes is located just across the border on Floydville Road, they've been able to operate it very effectively and have not really had competition from other operators. But at the same time, we're keeping our fees in line with others and providing a great service to the town. So,
All right, so, and I'll ask for a motion effective July 10th, 2023 to adopt the 2023 bulky waste transfer station fee schedule as presented.
Move that.
Second?
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
thank you.
you're welcome. Okay, the next item we have is the proposed revisions to the Board of Selectmen Rules of Procedure. So at the last meeting, Do you want to talk about this at all, Lee?
No, I think I'd prefer that our work group discuss this one.
Sure. Want to present some of this?
Tyrannical Wellman and I, we had a work group discuss this at the request or the motion of our board. I think we had a robust discussion. Wendy was, our first select woman, was able to participate as well. And the substantive changes that you see before us tonight are not meant to in any way quash First Amendment. In fact, the wording is modeled after adopted and implemented wording in the town of Mansfield, and we believe there are other examples where this verbiage is used across the state. Again, I think we can turn and cite that. In no way are these requirements. Folks can certainly choose to ignore us. And I'm sure we can talk to Attorney DiCrescenzo about the legality of that. In no way are we trying to quash First Amendment rights. But the intent of the meeting, as you saw tonight, we didn't start business until an hour in. And while it is certainly important to receive public comment, the intent of this is to shift the agenda, whereas items that are relevant to the agenda were up first from public comment so that we're able to receive input. And the folks that want to share the rest of their perspective are certainly free to do so. We're just going to ask that it be done at the end of the agenda once the business of the town is conducted. There are many ways to get items on the agenda. I would not recommend public audience as the primary way. Our email addresses, calling the town manager, calling the first select woman, calling any one of us are certainly simple ways to get on the agenda for appropriate items. But the substance of this is in no way to quash anybody's First Amendment rights, but it is trying to overall support town staff. We have had potential HIPAA violations up here. We have had potential, and folks are saying it's legal. You're not allowed to yell fire in a crowded theater. So the First Amendment is restricted in certain cases, and there are laws of what people are and are not allowed to say. So I respectfully disagree that there is no limit to the First Amendment, and the courts have ruled that there are limits to it. The point is, and again, folks can ignore us. Folks don't have to follow this guidance. Folks can get up and say whatever the heck they want, whatever the hell they want. And we can choose to ask them to sit down or not as a result of it. But that's overall the intent of what we tried to put forward tonight. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Let me just, I'll just hit on, I think everything that Sean said, I'm on board with. And for me, there's like three problems that this helps to solve. The first is helping our residents channel issues or questions or concerns to the most productive and efficient channel. And we saw, for example, with the businesses that raised concerns about their assessments, they came to one meeting and voiced their concerns, and then they came to another meeting when we were able to address those concerns. And a more productive channel would have been for them to say, hey, we have concerns. And then we could have had an agenda item where we address those concerns, and they wouldn't have had to come to two separate meetings. So one is, I think, steps that we can take to educate our residents and make sure that we can funnel them to the most appropriate and productive channel to address those concerns. The other, as Sean said, is for me, is getting to the business of the meeting so that we can have more time for the substantive discussions that taxpayers ultimately elected us to have. And then the third is ensuring that we're promoting a safe work environment. If residents have concerns about the performance of town staff, there are channels in which they can share those concerns legally and productively, and those can be addressed. In this forum, I welcome any resident to criticize any member of this board. We are elected. But the people, one of the things that I've just been bowled over in my time in local government is the dedication and the passion of the people who serve our town at every level. And I've seen evidence recently that the culture we're creating through public audience is going to deter really good people from wanting to serve in government. And that's a darn shame.
Okay.
Thank you. And I think that just having been on this board, now I'm going into 6 years, there is a constant habit at public audience where misinformation is shared as well. And that is not constructive to what we are trying to do up here as volunteers to lead this town forward. And when public audience is used to spread misinformation, that is not the proper use of free speech. Second, we have, Justice Brennan's decision, which talks about public officials, it doesn't speak to the ability for abusive language, no matter what, to be used for employees. That is you need to, so that's, again, it's misinformation being put out there. So part of what we are doing up here is that the public comment is often directed at employees here in a harassing way. And it's a harassment, and we are the stewards of those employees here to protect them and how they feel about coming to work on a daily basis. That is part of the reason why I'm full support of how you're shaping the comments in this evolved document.
So I would like to say, our residents are our greatest resource, and I am not in support of censoring, silencing, making it more difficult for them to speak. I think it should be civil, and we don't always need to like what we hear, but our job is to listen, and there are not a lot of avenues, and this takes away from it. So I'm a hard no on this.
Yeah, I had some comments. I did sit in on this, and this was something that I had talked to our prior town manager about, restructuring the agenda so we would have public comment at the beginning and also at the end. And after listening to people and actually doing some homework on this and looking at other towns, I'm not necessarily in favor of changing how we're doing it at this point in time. I know that we do the rules of procedure normally at the organizational meeting, and I know that there are potential changes that Maria had started with Trish and I think Franklin to move forward as far as potentially outlining the actual agenda structure with some improvements in that. And if we're going to add another public audience at the end, that might be the place to do it when we present that. So that was one thing that I've been thinking in terms of this, is to just, leave that to when we revisit this, let people come and speak at public audience now and share their views on this proposal. And there's two other things. One thing that I had heard in a session through CCM is that you can state the ground rules up front. The chair is allowed to state certain ground rules up front and hold people to that if they don't follow that. And that's not something we normally do here, but it is something that is a tool that is available to the board or to the chair. And that would be hard to do, but I think I'd be willing to do it if I had to, in the next 5 meetings that we have. The other thing that I would suggest if we were going to do this is, rather than vote for it tonight, is to hold a public hearing and let people come out and say what they think about it before we do the change. I don't think, since we've lived with this for the last 5 years, forever, I think we've lived with this. I don't see the harm in holding off a little bit. So at this point in time, I'm not ready to approve it as written, but I just am interested to see if anybody is interested in potentially pushing this off and having a public hearing and letting, advertising it so that the public can speak.
I am not comfortable with some of the things, as I've listened to people. There are some parts of that I think we can revise. I'm troubled by the thought that ordering the agenda is limiting. I'm not sure how that concept that it's limiting free speech. I don't. So if someone could talk to me offline as far as asking people to make their comments relative to the agenda item up front at the beginning of the meeting, and then having open, free dialogue that we have now at the end just for expediency, I don't understand how that's being construed as limiting free speech. So if that's something we need to debate, we should certainly debate that. Start some basic table stakes. One thing I would ask to maybe consider if we do change is pardon me, because this is all good hard work, but my eyes are open to moving the public comment time back to the 5 minutes so that there is no appearance that we are limiting free speech. That would be not a change that we currently have. So that's something I would think that we could probably continue to workshop on relative to that I would ask that we change in the document at a minimum. But again, just going back, I don't think reminding people and asking people to be kind is necessarily a bad thing. And it's not necessarily that's not limiting free speech. But I know there are people who work in this building who sometimes don't feel good because of the things that people say about them. I don't feel good about that.
Yeah, I would just like to say, I agree with Chris. I think that, you can have reasonable time, place, manner restrictions. I think that having, if somebody wants to talk about something on the agenda, having that at the beginning of the meeting just allows for a more expedient meeting. And it also, I would hope that we could make it more transparent to people and have people understand better how to get something on the agenda. Like we just discussed that, because that's going to allow for a more productive meeting. There is nothing more frustrating to me than to have somebody come with an issue that we could have done something about and had an agenda item and an action item teed up, but we can't because we didn't. This is the first time we're hearing about it. And it gives the appearance that we are not prepared or that we don't care, when really we just were, it was the first that we had ever heard of it. So I would hope that we would be able to have our public better understand how to get agenda items teed up. And I think that the idea between the 5 minutes and the 3 minutes is that you could speak about agenda items for 5 minutes, and then you would still be able to speak again later for 3, like you would get 8 minutes, but we could expand that at the end to another 5. And so there's no appearance that we're cutting into that time. So I think that would be fair. And the rest of it, I think we're just trying to encourage people to, be kind, and especially about their comments that our staff are subject to as part of their jobs when they have to be here. That's a suggestion.
Say what you want about me. You can call me anything you want.
Yeah, Heather has a comment.
That's not being kind.
I'm a steward of those individuals.
Heather.
I agree that, as I said before, that residents, I would hope, would be civil and kind, but putting public comment at the end makes it incredibly difficult for residents and their time. You never know what time our meetings are ending. So it's these changes, we should be making things easier for our residents to speak out on anything. And that makes it more difficult. And putting it at 3 minutes, 5 minutes isn't enough time often enough. But saying, oh, so maybe it's at 8, maybe it's at 10, who knows? And that to me is, it's putting a burden on our residents when our job is to listen.
If I could. So
Yeah.
I agree, our job is to listen. My challenge is that there are a lot of ways to yell at us. There are a lot of ways to tell us things. You can email us. And my challenge is this podium is used because it's on TV, not because people are trying to be transparent to us. And you can say all the things a public audience in an email and never even have to show up in this room. So we're not being less transparent by changing an agenda item. You can still have your comment heard by this board. There are many ways for this board to hear those comments. You can hear it through phone calls, emails, at the meeting, after the meeting. So moving an agenda item does not limit transparency. It changes the order of a business meeting of the town. The purpose of this meeting is not for people to get yelled at. The purpose of this meeting is to conduct the business of the town and provide a forum for residents.
The majority of the time, we're not being yelled at. People come, we have residents who come with fabulous suggestions, concerns, things that are real.
Don't disagree, and we're still giving them an opportunity to do that. We're just changing the order of when, because we can't act upon them that night.
But it doesn't matter if you can act upon it.
It does.
It's about listening and having residents arrive at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. is putting a burden on them. It's making it more difficult. And I just am not in support of anything that makes it more difficult for our residents' voices to be heard by us. And sending an email is one thing, and we get a number of emails, and oftentimes they're not responded to as much as and although we are not responding to public comment or having a dialogue there, for residents to be able to come here and speak before us, to know that, okay, did my email get read? Who knows? But they're here and in front of us, they're taking the time out of their day for real concerns that they have, and for us to say, well, your concern means so much that maybe show up at 8 and you can talk at 9, no, show up at 7, maybe it's 10. I think we're doing a disservice to our residents by doing this.
So I'd like to add one more thing, and like I said, I don't know if we're willing to take this back to the drawing board to table this, but you know, just coming to speak to specific agenda items also created a problem for me in that it could be current business and things like that. So that to me would be something that I would expand. Could you come and talk about last week's agenda? Could you talk about something in the communication section? So that would just be one of the areas that I think we could expand on. And the other thing that I would think maybe if we put this out is to see, put out the word to people that this is how you can get on the agenda, because I don't think we do that today. Share that information and see if that works and see if people come forward and we can add stuff to the agenda. And then if that does work, then maybe we revisit this, when we do the org meeting and we change the full rules of procedure, and just kind of see if that is a way to get the people, out of this, coming here to present it. So those are just options. I'm not sure, A, if the work group is willing to take this back, B, if we can just table this for further review, or if people would like to take a vote on it tonight. If we do take a vote on it tonight, it is, as Tom Fitzgerald pointed out to me, that this could be treated as a pilot, and if we do get more complaints from residents in public audience and they're not happy with it, or we're not hearing from people and able to add things to the agenda, this can again be revised at the organizational meeting.
I think that's an important point, Wendy, because we came up with this after looking at about half a dozen other examples from around Connecticut. But the nice thing is this is not an ordinance. This is essentially a policy. It's our policy, and we can change it and should change it as we realize what's working and what isn't. So I would be supportive of moving forward with the motion to approve this tonight with the change that Chris suggested, that both public comment periods be 5 minutes.
Okay. Is there any other changes suggested in this? I have a question for Bob, who's sitting back there. Bob, the section that you took out about the first selectman upon approval may add the additional public participation. Is that because we would be adding the section at the end? I assume it just says it may at its discretion allow additional time, but in essence, we're saying we would have a public audience at the end whether or not anybody comes.
No, I made that change because the charter does not make it discretionary on the board to have that second session where everyone can talk about everything, because the charter is very specific that at every meeting, the Board of Selectmen shall allow time for people to speak. There's 3 words there. I think I put it in the statement there, which is broader than agenda items. You have to give, under the charter, you have to give people, the public, the opportunity to come and petition you on any subject. At some point in your meeting, the charter doesn't say first agenda or last agenda. It just says at every meeting.
What if we did this? What if we, as an idea, what if we added all the good things? There's good work in here as far as illuminating how to get in contact with the people up here and in town hall. There's work in here that talks about that. That to me is a positive. Can we agree on that? That more information, telling people how that's a positive, that's a win, boom, okay, that stays in potentially. If we also removed, I'd be in favor of removing some of the the structure that is concerning around, it alters how a person presents themselves. For currently, they come up, they introduce themselves, they tell, and they give their address. Okay, so maybe we stay with that type of structure. So we remove any of the language that talks more about, and I will say that I'm some of the person that kind of thought about that, but I'm listening to people. Okay, I'm listening to people. So if we remove anything that creates more structure or accountability, okay, people may fear. I'm willing to bend on that, if you will. But I don't want to I don't want to change the amount of time. I'd like to keep it 5 minutes for public dialogue. But what I would ask for is to shuffle, for the efficiency purpose, to shuffle the speaking time. So agenda items up front, public audience at the back, and we try it with those modest modifications. We try it, and if we hear that it's a complete failure, or we see there's a deficiency, or we feel that people are being limited, then we as good people who are listeners and are public servants and stewards of you all as well, we will change it back. That's what I would propose. So take out anything that feels like we're adding in legislation. Just do the reshuffling of time and make sure that we have 5 minutes for public. Is that a possibility that we can get some consensus out of up here?
Well,
versus going to like 1,000 different.
Are we just saying that we'd like the work group to take this back and revise it and bring it back to us at the next meeting?
I guess I'm just not clear what those revisions.
Well, I'm trying to, I didn't write down everything that Chris just said, but those are notes I'm sure that Tom could help, Franklin helped with this, and just see if we can tweak this a little bit to get approval. Otherwise, we could take a vote with it if we have all those changes that were said and can make them in here.
So I'm going to be a no with Heather. That's his current. If you ask me to vote right now, I'm going to be a no.
Okay, so
But I don't think that but I don't want to lose sight of there's a way to actually, I do think there's value. We can improve what we do here. Don't just lose, just don't stop.
Well,
I moved to table and send back to the work group for additional revisions.
Okay, I'll second that.
It's a non-debatable motion, so
Oh,
Thank you.
means we have to vote now. There's no more debate.
okay, so we're sending it back to the work group
We
to
have to
come.
vote. We have to vote.
Okay, so all those in favor of sending it back to the work group for revisions to bring back to this board, say aye.
Aye.
I'll say aye.
Chris, can
Any
you come to the
opposed?
next work group meeting?
When is it?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not doing
Yes,
this alone.
100%.
Fine if they bring it back.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're bringing it back.
I don't intend
Yeah, we're
to
not
support it
approving, we're not
again for the
approving it, because
next one, but that's fine.
I was not planning to approve, but we're not approving it tonight, we're looking for changes, and then we'll get another chance to approve it.
Yep.
Okay, so we're all voted to send
It's
it back to the
tabled.
work group. Okay, all right. Okay, the last item on the agenda is a good one. If I can find my sheet here, is the certification of the cannabis petition. So we know that people were out there working super hard to make that happen. So we thank everyone who did that, and they took part in the democratic process to get this on the ballot, which was part of the intent for pushing this off. So I'm going to ask for a motion effective July 10th to acknowledge receipt of a petition that met the minimum statutory requirement of not less than 10% of qualified electors in the town of Simsbury. Further move to authorize staff to publicize the Board of Selectmen's warning to the electors of Simsbury as approved by the town attorney.
Move that.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. So the next item we have is, okay, so I'm losing track of all my paper. The appointment of, the resignations from various boards and commissions. If the board, so we have some resignations. First of all, I do want to say, there's some people that are leaving public service that have been in public service for a long time. Linda Schofield has been on the Board of Finance. We thank Linda for her service and her fiscal responsibility to the town. Ed LaMontagne is leaving as a alternate member of the Aging and Disability, but will be coming back in Part B as a full-time member. Vic Bible is resigning due to some issues, and we thank Vic for his service. And I think Diane Duran is moving or and going to a different job and is resigning from the Planning Commission. So move retroactive to June 16, 2023 to accept the resignation of Diane T. Duran as an alternate member of the Planning Commission. Move retroactive, I'm going to do them all together if that's okay. June 16 to accept the resignation of Victor Bible as a regular member of the Aging and Disability Commission. Move retroactive to June 22, 2023 to accept the resignation of Ed LaMontagne as an alternate member of the Aging and Disability Commission. Move retroactive to July 5th, 2023 to accept the resignation of Linda Schofield as a regular member of the Board of Finance.
Move those with our thanks.
And can I get a
I'll
second? Second. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, can I do that? Thank you. I lost mine. The next item is the appointment of Ed LaMontagne, who we just moved off as an alternate to the Aging and Disability Commission. Move effective July 10th, 2023 to appoint Ed LaMontagne as a regular member of the Aging and Disability Commission with a term ending January 1st, 2027.
Move that.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any comments, changes to the minutes?
Beautifully done.
Okay, anybody? Nothing. Okay, and then we have this communication from the Conservation Commission asking for a change to the town code. So would we, at the next meeting, would we schedule a public hearing for that proposed change? Because it's in the code, it's in the general legislation. Oh, and here comes George. Would that be how it would have to be handled, because it is in the code?
So we forwarded you the letter from the chairman of the Conservation Commission as part of your correspondence. So I don't necessarily know that it's a request to amend the town code. I think it's to share that information with you. Look back in the records, and the letter had been written a couple of times over the last decade or so, in 18 and then in 15 by several chairpersons of that commission. So the question would be is that if that's something, if you're compelled by the letter, then I would direct town staff to perhaps draft some language, although I guess they included draft language, and then schedule a public hearing if it was something you're in favor of. And I'm here to certainly answer any questions about the letter, but that would be the process.
Okay. Yeah. It sounds like if there's a pretty tough project out here, you don't want to be limited by the metrics that are stated in the code today.
That's exactly their recommendation. Yeah.
Okay. So that's something I think would be good to consider. Right.
So I'm willing to enter into this process, but I would really love to hear from the business community, particularly Main Street and the Chamber, on the impact of potential applicants, because we worked really hard to cut down on fees and process. And what I don't want is to introduce another fee to an already fee-heavy process and a lot of constraints, right? Because the town doesn't pay for it, the business does. So somebody's still paying for this expert, and I don't want this abused by a
fee. Balance is the most important part of that.
By a future commission, right? Because if they want it on every single project.
As the code is written, the Board of Selectmen have to approve
right.
Essentially the conservation.
But it's so big that essentially nothing comes in right now, right? The requirement is 100,000 square feet,
right.
So essentially it never comes to us.
That's correct.
So,
but in fact, I don't know that any of your boards and commissions have chosen to follow that in years.
Okay, that's a good clarification, George. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay.
Okay. So before we move into executive session, we have 4 sections, and I'm going to say who's going to join us for each section.
Can we give George consensus on town staff writing some language, just so we can have some? I think they're looking for that, right?
I think we've got draft language. We haven't run it past the town attorney. We'll do that, and then we'll bring it back to you.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. There's consensus. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't want to leave you hanging, George.
Sorry. Okay. So before we move into executive session, we have 4 sections. The first one is talking about 442 Hot Meadow, and joining us for that will be Attorney DeCrescenzo, George McGregor, Lee Erdman and Tom Fitzgerald. Talking about the memo of understanding for Main Street Partnership. We'll have the town attorney, we'll have the town manager, and we'll have the deputy town manager. Section C, for the MOU on the SVAA, we'll have the town manager, the town attorney, and the deputy town manager. And for the last item, we will have the labor attorney, Mike Harrington, the town manager, and the deputy town manager. So with that, I ask for a motion to move into executive session.
Move that.
Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, everyone, it's time for you to leave.